across the city. Uber, Lyft, also yellow, green, some livery, and some corporate black car members as well. But the majority of our members now drive for Uber and Lyft. So let me tell you why we are doing this strike, to begin there. So last year, everybody knows that the cost of bread and milk was more expensive in America than, compared to last 40 years. It cost the most amount of money to buy bread and milk last year in the United States of America, more than any other time in the last 40 years. And so every American was having a hard time. But for drivers, they have to pay for the expense of the car, for gasoline, for insurance, repairs, maintenance, the lease, or the financing. Those expenses in our New York region, they went up 250 times more than even the cost of bread and milk. So the Taxi and Limousine Commission has a regulation on how much on every trip for each mile and each minute Uber and Lyft must pay to the drivers. So we went to the TLC and we said, drivers need a raise. We are fighting for a raise for all drivers. TLC agreed to give that raise. Every year, the TLC looks at the inflation and they give a small adjustment for the per mile and per minute rate according to how much the household expenses went up. But last year, because of the crisis of gasoline and the car costs, our organization and Nusratji, Aziz Bey, two of our main speakers, every public hearing we testified, we fought for a raise according to the inflation of gasoline and the car cost. And the TLC agreed. So TLC said, okay, the per minute rate will go up by 7%, but the per mile rate will go up by 21%. And we were going to get that raise beginning on December 19th, 2022. Same day, yellow and green cab meter was going up, first time in 10 years. But on December 9th, in the final hour, on a Friday evening, like right now, Uber went to court and they filed a lawsuit to stop the raise. Uber said that this raise would cost them too much money. At the same time, in the same court papers, Uber told the court that from 2019 to 2022, they are charging the public 49% more. So Uber has no problem charging the public more, they just don't want to pay the drivers more. And so since that time, from December 19th, again on January 6th, and now on February 26th, our union has continued to organize for a strike. On February 1st, Uber did raise the rates because TLC required them to, but it was a small percentage, only according to how much the expenses for bread and milk went up. But the raise that drivers were going to get, based on how much gasoline and car costs went up, we're still waiting for that raise. We're still fighting for that raise. And so that is one of the demands of our strike. But our strike is not just about one raise. Our strike is to send a message to Uber and Lyft that the drivers have a right to be paid a fair rate. Drivers do the work, they pay the expenses, they take the risks. Drivers must be paid what is due to them. And to demand that Uber and Lyft, that they stop deactivating drivers. Deactivation is a very fancy way of saying they're taking the job away. That one day you wake up and you're getting ready to go to work you go on your app, and you find out they took you off. They said, no more. You cannot work for us anymore. No notice, no real reason, and no real right to appeal. But the drivers still have the expenses, maybe $60,000 for that car payment. They're left with no income, no job, no path to get the job back, but very high expenses. So we are working with the councilman, Shekhar Krishnan, who is going to introduce a bill in city council to give the drivers the right to stop these unfair deactivations. So our strike on February 26th, fundamentally, it is about winning back the full raise that Uber sued to stop. It is about stopping unfair deactivations so drivers who spend all this money have a sense of notice and real job security. And it is about raising the rates on things like out-of-town fares and for services like Uber XL SUVs, where you have a large car, more expenses, but they're paying you the less rate. And for all Uber and Lyft drivers, that while Uber and Lyft are charging the public 50% more compared to 2019, as they charge the public more, they must pay more to the drivers. Right. Driver pay cannot be frozen at just a minimum pay. We demand that as driver labor and expenses bring in more wealth to the companies and they charge more to the public, they must share that with the drivers who are making that revenue possible. And so on February 26th, if you give one message to our community, this is the message I ask you to give. To my brothers and sisters who are driving for Uber and Lyft, to their wives, their husbands, their children, their parents, their families, our strike on February 26th is maybe the most important strike we have done in our 27-year history as a union. With this strike, we can send a powerful message to the biggest companies in this country to say to them that the drivers are united, we are not scared, we will not be divided, we will not be silent, we demand what is ours, we are not asking for a penny more, what we want is real justice. If we have a successful strike on February 26th, the Uber and Lyft drivers of New York City, for the first time, will feel real power in their hands. And so I say to the drivers, and I say to your families, please stand with us for this strike. You can still work the city, you can still work Kennedy. Drivers will not have to sacrifice very much, but when all drivers do the strike, in our hands we have real power to make Uber and Lyft feel the pressure that they make drivers feel every day. And so please help us spread that word.